Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I'm back home, as you can see. I've been busy all week. I haven't posted anything on this channel this week, but I've been busy on my other channel, eSysman Tech. I posted a road trip video, the trip home from Genoa back here, 1,700 kilometers in just over a day. And I've also just posted, just before I started recording this, I posted a video of me collecting my brand new car. So if you want to see that video or either of those videos, check out my other channel, eSysman Tech. I'll put a link in all the normal places. So the first question is from Ralph Braun. Do super yachts get caught short on fuel while in the middle of the ocean? Can they refuel at sea? No vessel should ever get caught running out of fuel in the middle of the ocean. There's a few, I mean super yachts especially, and I'll explain that. There's a couple of things that you have to be aware of. When you refuel, there's a lot of calculations that go into that. It's not like with a car where you just see that you're running out of fuel and you fill it up. It's a bit more complicated than that, and the engineers and the captain will talk at length as to things like where's the vessel going, how much fuel are they going to need, where are they going to get the fuel from, etc., etc. And the reason why I said for super yachts especially is because on many super yachts, or on all vessels, the fuel is also used as ballast, right? So when the vessel's full of fuel, it sits lower in the water, so it's more, it's using that fuel as ballast. As you use your fuel, the vessel starts to come higher in the water and it's more prone to roll because the tanks are situated in positions like that are equal sizes and lengths generally. So when you fill up the tanks, there'll be fuel on equal sides of the tank. There'll be some in the middle as well, but generally the tanks are in position so when you fill them up, there is equal amount of fuel on either side, and you can pump the fuel to different tanks based on the weather conditions. So if the vessel's listing over to one side, you can actually pump the fuel into another tank to correct the lean. As you deplete your fuel, your ability to use it as ballast it goes away, right? So, but what you can do is you can, on some vessels, on the bigger yachts especially, they'll have ballast tanks. So as they use the fuel, they can take in water into the ballast tanks to counteract that fuel being burnt away. But not all super yachts have that. Only the bigger super yachts generally have that. So that's a reason. There's a couple of reasons why you would never be caught out like that, and you would never run out of fuel. If you were in the middle of the ocean, or if you were 3/4 of the way through an ocean trip and you had to call someone to say you run out of fuel, I think you'd be losing your job. So that wouldn't happen. Okay, so the next question is from Lead Reviewer, I believe it is. There have been instances in which boat owners have had to leave their anchors behind because it became stuck. Have you ever heard of such a thing happening to a super yacht, and how would such a thing be handled if it won't let loose? I've never heard of that happening with a super yacht. If that happened, then you would just release the anchor chain and it would unravel, and eventually it would just, it's not connected at the end, it's wound around, and if you were to unwind it, it will just come out. You have the end of the anchor chain is called the bitter end, that will go through and it will just drop straight out. So that would be how they would do it, the technicalities of it. I've never heard of anyone having an anchor stuck in a way that they couldn't actually retrieve it. What would happen, depending on where it was, but most likely what would happen is after you let it go, you'd have to contact a salvage company, and they would come and salvage the anchor and the chain and then bring it back up, and then you would take it to a shipyard somewhere and have it reinstalled. I was on a yacht in 2018, I think it was, where our anchor chain broke. Actually broke, and we were in high winds. We were anchored in Cannes in south of France, and our anchor chain broke, and we were adrift for about 5-10 minutes until we actually realized what was happening. Everyone sort of scrambled. We actually went between two other yachts, like adrift, just backwards. Yeah, so it was quite scary. Eventually we got the engines going. So what happened is the engineers ran in, started the engines, called up the bridge, said you've got your engines, and then the captain used the engines to maneuver the vessel to get control of the vessel, but not before we'd actually passed between two other vessels, so that was quite scary. So we were lucky, really, that we didn't have a big accident. Okay, Kevin Binoy, what do you make of Roman Abramovich's new yacht, and would you like to work on it? The new yacht is called Motor Yacht Solaris, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a replacement for Luna, which he sold in 2014. Luna was a replacement for Le Grand Blue, which he owned much earlier than that. It was 2009, I think it was, when he got rid of Le Grand Blue. There was a story that he lost it in a bet, but that was he actually sued a newspaper in the UK for running that story, and he won as well. So yeah, he won it at the court case. So that's probably not true. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. So he sold he got rid of Le Grand Blue. He got Luna. He had Luna built at the same time as Eclipse, for God knows why. He didn't use Luna that much, I'm told, by crew that used to work on there. And then he sold that vessel, and then he commissioned Solaris, and that's taken quite a long time to build. And Abramovich is meticulous about his vessels. He spends an absolute fortune on them. The equipment that I've seen on the vessels is first rate. It's absolutely first rate. He's very much into his tech, his AV as well. He loves to, obviously he owns Chelsea Football Club in the UK, and he loves watching football. And when Chelsea are playing a game and it's not on TV, he has his own crew, his own team, go to the event and film it and then broadcast it to his super yacht so he can watch it live. So he has a whole team of people recording this football game and then beam it straight to him so he can watch it. So he's really into his tech. So I'm sure it's an amazing vessel inside. Yeah. Would I want to work on it? My own experience in the past of working on brand new yachts is it's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff going on that's beyond your control. For instance, warranty, everything's under warranty when you first work on a vessel. You have lots of teething problems. I know it sounds crazy. Some people might think, well, you spent hundreds of millions on a super yacht, it should be perfect, but it doesn't work that way. It's bespoke. Everything is one of one, all of the equipment that's installed. I mean, obviously the parts are, some of the AV equipment, say, and some of the engines and stuff, it's all built by companies, but it's all installed on one vessel. They're not making 100 of these vessels or 1,000, they're making one. And everything is bespoke, like the elevators and all of the bits inside, the AV equipment, everything is bespoke. So you get a lot of teething problems. And because it's all under warranty, you can't really, as a technical people, you can't really do that much to it. You can't touch much of it at first because it's under warranty. So and also there's an awful lot of work going on to be able to get that vessel ready. So in short, in 10 years ago, I'd love to have worked on it, and now not so much. Next question is Joe Carson. Are you looking forward to working on Solaris? Okay, so I'm not working on Solaris. I have no intention of working on it. I've not been offered a job on it. So no, I'm not looking forward to it because it's not actually happening. Tony Sibley, does your boss pay travel expenses between the vessel and home? That's a good question, actually. Yes, they do. So every boat is different. The boats I've worked on in the past, the boats I've worked on, in my experience, should I say, they pay for your flight and they pay for your incidentals. So if you get a taxi to the airport and then you fly home and you get a taxi from the airport to your home. If you get the receipts, when you go back to work the next time, they'll give you that money back. There are some yachts that say you're only entitled to a couple of flights a year. So they'll say like you're entitled to 2 fully paid flights a year, and if you have a third one, then you have to pay for it yourself. Now I worked on a vessel that had that policy, but I never paid for a flight. So I don't know how they worked it, but they worked it so I never had to pay. And in the experience that I was told, even though it didn't happen, is that if ever I have to pay for one, they'll make sure it's the least expensive out of the 3 flights or the 3 trips that I made to the vessel. So yeah, so some yachts might have a policy where they say you have to pay it yourself, but I've never worked on one. I don't know if they exist. And in my experience, which is over 10 years on super yachts, that's never happened. Okay, 782HRR. What is the turnover in the industry? Are most yachting crews short-term careers? Probably, and this is just an opinion and a guess, I think there are quite a few people who come into the industry and don't stay that long, maybe a couple of years. And there's a few reasons for that. I think the people who do that are the ones that come in who are untrained. So you might get people who come in as deckhands, because effectively you don't really need any, depending on the size of the vessel, you don't need any qualifications, or you only need like a couple of short courses to get on the vessel. So I think some people come on like that, like the chef, like the interior staff, the housekeeping and the stewards and stewardesses. They might come in because they might be, you know, waiters and stuff like that on land, and they think, oh, I'll try super yachts, and they stay for a little while and then they leave. But the qualified people, like the engineers and the deck departments, they've gone to, you know, great lengths to get qualifications to get into those positions. So they are long term. Now, on the bigger yachts, the yachts are over 3,000 gross tons, they required to have commercial tickets. So most of them come from the commercial industry. So they'll start on, you know, tankers or cruise ships or something like that, and then they come over to super yachts, and then they see that there's good food and the money's good, and then they stay. But yeah, so yeah, I think there is quite a lot of turnover. Another thing that's kind of related is people generally don't stay on a yacht very long. So like on land, you hear a lot of people, I've worked in this place for 30 years and stuff. You don't really get that much on the super yachts. I have worked with people who have been on a yacht since it was built and it's 15 years old. So it does happen, but I think people move around more in this industry. And I think it's because they just fancy a change, and there's a lot of jobs out there, generally, not in the last 12 months though, because of you know what. Okay, G Bean. On larger super yachts, what provisions are there for loading provisions without pushing hand trucks through guest areas? I think he means super yachts. There's no reason why provisions would need to be pushed through guest areas. Vessels are built in a way that doesn't happen. So that should never happen. The way provisions are loaded onto the yacht is generally with the crew forming a chain, and then they pass it from the vehicle outside, and they pass it all the way into the boat. I think I've shown this on the channel before. I think I've got some footage of Madame Goo where they're doing it, and also another boat in Monaco. But yeah, there's no reason why they would ever have to do that, because the crew would freak out if they had to take it through a guest area, because first of all, they're not going to use trolleys, because the floor in the guest area will be all really expensive wood, and it'll be highly polished, and we don't even wear our shoes when we go into these areas. So the idea of like wheeling a squeaky trolley through there, you know, with black rubber wheels on it and stuff falling off, it just wouldn't happen. So you'll have they'll be on the main deck outside, and they'll carry it in to the crew area, and usually, depending on the size of the yacht, again, there'll be an elevator where you can load it in, and you can take it down to where the dry store is or where the fridges are. So yeah, so that's how it works. You even have the chain going down the stairs if there's no elevator, and then you'll take it on that way. Anonymous, what's the longest and shortest stay on a boat by an owner? The longest, I mean, some people live on the yachts. Joe Lewis, who owns Aviva, he lives on his yacht. I was interviewed for Aviva, the original one, the 68-meter one. I was interviewed for that in 2011. And at the time, I was working on another boat in Genoa, funnily enough. And I had a single cabin, and it was very nice where I was working. And I interviewed for this other one, but it was a shared cabin, and they said that the owner lives on board. I didn't know who the owner was at the time. But they said the owner lives on board and it's non-rotational. There was no rotation for me, so I'd been there basically living on board with this owner. So I turned the job down. But and I've since known people who work on that vessel, and yeah, he lived on board. He lives on board, and he doesn't actually own a house. He owns houses, but he doesn't live in them, and he lives in the Bahamas for most of the time. Simon Templar, do most billionaire super yacht owners have bodyguards with them on board? And if so, do you ever have any interactions with those guards, quick chat, etc.? Most of the ones I've worked for, yes, they have a security team. They're usually ex-special forces or ex-military. I've worked at ex-French Foreign Legion, ex-British Special Forces, New Zealand, Australian Special Forces, etc. So yeah, so a lot of them do have a team. And yeah, if the boss comes on board for a month, then there's going to be overlap with them, and they're going to be eating in the mess. So yeah, we get to know them quite well, and usually they're a good bunch. You know, I'm ex-military as well, so yeah, you get on with them quite well. And some owners don't have security teams, surprisingly. I worked with let's say, I wouldn't say high profile. I didn't know who he was before I worked there, but I would say on one of the larger yachts, surprisingly, the yacht had security, but he didn't come with his own security, which was quite surprising. Jeff Ehlers, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. What do you believe is the longest motor yacht that two people can operate without a crew and explore the world? I've had this question before. And what I actually did is I actually asked a couple of people who you might have heard of. I asked Aquaholic and I asked Super Yacht Captain. And basically they said, Tristan said 75 feet is the limit. So that's about 22 meters. And anything over it starts to get silly and dangerous. That's what Tristan said. And Nick from Aquaholic says, agreed, 75 foot-ish. It's actually quite interesting how boats seem to jump much over this. A Pearl 80 is just about doable for two, but a Sunseeker 86 yacht just feels vast in comparison. So there you go. So those guys know more about that than me. Tristan is a captain, and Nick, his bread and butter is yachts around those sizes, and a lot of the vessels he does are around those sizes. So there you go. Colin Barlett, how often do super yachts update their onboard AV tech? Are they bumping specs on TVs, streaming media, etc.? Every single year? Do they have AirPlay or Chromecasts? Well, there's a lot of questions here. Wireless chargers, etc. I get it. Okay, so how often does a super yacht upgrade its AV equipment? So when the vessel's built, they'll build a very high-end AV system, and they'll most likely be using Crestron, which is a system for managing multiple systems. So you'll have lighting, you'll have your Apple TVs or your media. So you'll have like a streaming service. When I say streaming, like Plex, well, you have a database on board and it streams it to the different areas of the vessel. And you have your air conditioning, and it's all controlled from an iPad. So Crestron is the app that is programmed to speak to all of these different things. So when you press a button on the iPad, it sends a signal to the different places. It all has to be programmed. It's all bespoke. So the Crestron system is really good in that. Even as the rate of improvement, it's really good that you can use a system that's quite old and it still does the job, right? Because it's the back end of the system. But what you might find you have to do is upgrade the slots. So each area of the vessel will have a slot in the back with AV in, AV out, and it sends out the signal in a certain resolution. So let's say you start off with 1080 and then 4K comes out. So you can go to Crestron and say, I want to buy new slots for that so I can go up to 4K, and then they'll sell you the slot, you put them in, and now you've got 4K. It needs some programming as well. Obviously, there comes a point where Crestron say, well, we don't make that anymore, that system, the Matrix, they call it. We don't make that anymore. So if you want to upgrade to 8K, for instance, then you might have to buy a new one, depending on the age of the one that you've got. As far as all the other equipment is concerned, like your televisions and your Apple TVs or whatever, your Roku, which is like Apple TV, but not Apple, all that stuff, you can update that stuff more frequently, right? So because you're not going to do a full AV refit. Let's say you've got a 100-meter yacht. An AV refit on a 100-meter yacht is going to cost you, depending on how much you want to spend, but you're looking at least $1 million to update the whole system, back end, running all the cables, because you're going to have to upgrade the cables, right? So if you've got Cat 5 cables, let's say your yacht's 10 years old, it was built with Cat 5, and now you need Cat 7 or whatever, to get more streaming going. So you're going to have to run those cables. That's a big expense. Has to be done in the shipyard. The boat has to be basically pulled apart to all the deckheads come down, and conduits and stuff like this. It's a big job. So you're not going to be doing that. You're not going to have to do that every year, but when that needs to be done, it's very expensive. And you're looking at $1 million at the very least. I worked on a vessel which was over 100 meters, and we had a refit there, an AV refit, and I was effectively the project manager of that. And we spent $3.5 million on that refit. So yeah, it was a big boat, and they were very specific in what they wanted. And yeah, but they're not going to spend that that vessel's probably not had another upgrade since then. But if the owner sees the new TVs come out and he wants an 8K to replace the 4K, then you can do that. You don't need a full refit for that. So you can replace parts, but you have to have the Crestron programmed. So when you press the button, it turns on that television, because it needs to be programmed for that particular television. All right, guys, so that's all the questions I have. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions that came from what we've just talked about in the video. Let me know. Like I said, if you want to check out my new car, which I'm still super excited about, and I'm waiting again for my new car, which I know doesn't make sense, but if you want to know more about that, check out my video on my other channel. I'll put a link in here so you can see, and I'll put one down below as well. Effectively, I went into Porsche, bought a new car, and then I gave it to a complete stranger. So yeah, so go and check it out. I'll get it back next week though. So yeah, I can't wait for that. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. All right, bye-bye.